We're going to move to our lunchtime program. And without further ado, I just need to briefly introduce Mr. Bill Collins. Bill is with U.S. Bank's Government Banking Group. He's the head of the Government Banking Division for U.S. Bank. U.S. Bank, as you've probably noticed, is our title sponsor. And Bill will, in turn, introduce our keynote speaker. So welcome, Bill Collins.
Well, thank you, Treasurer Demchen, for the nice introduction. We're very proud and honored to be the title sponsor of the Women in the Money, the Utah Financial Empowerment Conference. One of the most important aspects of our business at U.S. Bank is our commitment to creating and sustaining a diverse and inclusive workplace. We believe in this so strongly that we built it into our core values. We draw strength from diversity and hold ourselves and our leaders accountable for enhancing the right kind of environment. We have a lot to be proud of, and we have a strong foundation to build upon as we create more opportunities for women and people of color throughout our organization. In addition to our formal mentoring and sponsorship programs and our business resource groups that focus on issues and opportunities related to affinity areas, we took additional steps forward in 2019. First, we created a company-wide Women's Advancement Program. The Women's Advancement Initiative is designed to increase female representation in senior leadership positions by addressing obstacles that women face to career advancement. This strategy focuses on the individual to enhance skills for all women and those in the leadership pipeline, the system to foster an inclusive culture, and the manager to support advancement. Second, we signed the Catalyst CEO Champions for Change pledge, which publicly demonstrates our commitment and support of this important topic. We believe everyone plays a role in this important work. Diversity makes our business better. We focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion because it's the right thing to do. It's core to who we are, it's vital to our customers, and allows us to achieve our full potential as an organization. Today, I'm delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, Gail Miller. Gail is the owner and the chairman of the board of the Larry H. Miller Group of Companies. Gail and her late husband, Larry, grew their business into one of the largest privately owned companies in the United States. Beginning with the purchase of Toyota of Murray in 1979, the Larry H. Miller Group is now comprised of more than 80 businesses and properties operating in 46 states and employing more than 10,000 people. Gail and Larry created a strong legacy of giving back to the communities in which they do business. They founded Larry H. Miller Charities, a nonprofit organization focused on health and education programs that support women and children's issues. Gail also presides over the Larry H. and Gail Miller Family Foundation, which supports religious, charitable, scientific, literary, and educational programs. Gail has been recognized with many public honors, including Director of Humane Letters from the University of Utah and the Salt Lake Community College, and an Honorary Doctor of Humanities from Weber State University. She is the recipient of the Salt Lake Chamber's highest award, a giant in our city, as well as the internationally recognized Athena Award. In 2012, Gail married Kim Wilson, who is senior attorney with one of Salt Lake City's oldest law firms, Snow, Christensen, and Martineau. Gail and Kim enjoy traveling, serving others, and spending time with their large family. They make their home right here in Salt Lake City. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Gail Miller.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. It's always fun to see a group of women gathered because you know there's a lot of energy and a lot of experience in every one of you. I think what you've had this morning is a very rich experience, and reading through the list of topics that you've learned about, how can you go away from an event like this not much better than you were, you are much better than you were when you came. I have spoken for Susan Madsen before, and so some of what I'm going to tell you today came from that talk. But I can't teach you what you've already learned. All I can do is tell you about my experiences. So that's where I'm going to go with my talk today. If I don't fill my allotted time, I'm happy to take questions. So if you want to think about questions while I'm speaking or anything that I speak about that's not clear, feel free to ask me when I'm through. To start out, I want to tell you that my childhood home was an old pioneer house built in the late 1800s, just north of downtown Salt Lake City in the Marmalade District. The floors of that house were raw wood. In those days, they put down planks of wood and they painted them, which is the way our house was. They weren't beautifully refined woods of today. They were painted brown and then they were covered up with what used to be bought at Grand Central, if any of you remember. You could buy a roll of linoleum and put it out over the wood floor to give some color and beauty to your room, which is what we did until those got full of holes. Then you rolled them up and threw them out and went and bought a new one. That Grand Central, if you didn't know, was a forerunner to maybe Lowe's of today or Home Depot. Now, in the old pioneer homes, the rooms are laid out room after room with no hallways. So if you come in the living room, you go through the bedroom to go to the kitchen. So there were no hallways and very, very few closets. We had one closet. So every room in the house was a common space, whether it was a bedroom or a living room or a kitchen. Everybody could be everywhere they wanted to be. The kitchen doubled as a laundry room. And every Monday, we would wheel the wringer washer in from the back porch to the kitchen while we washed our clothing in the wringer washer and hung them out on the line to dry. It seemed like every Monday, our neighbor who cooked with coal would start up his stove and all the soot would land on our clean laundry. But I remember clearly standing on that wood floor in a puddle of water that had spilled out of the washer, begging my mother for roller skates for my 6th birthday. And I was told that I should probably think of something else because they were very expensive and it was probably not likely that we'd be able to afford them that year. That disappointment was my first realization that maybe we were poor and that you had to have money to buy things. That was really my first experience with the concept of money and how important it was to have some. That was 70 years ago, and I've never forgotten it. It has shaped my attitude for the rest of my life about money. That one experience helped me to understand that as I got older, money was really important if I wanted to be able to do anything extra like my friends did, like go to girls' camp, buy the latest fashions, or have a really great Christmas like they did. And if I was going to have those things, I was going to have to pay for them myself. Now, I didn't obsess by it. It was just kind of a realization, because I didn't ask my parents for anything much after that first experience, because I knew that things like that were out of reach in our home. So as a teenager, I got a job at the telephone company so that I could earn my own money and take care of the things that I wanted and felt I needed instead of being a drain on my family. My parents had 9 children, so you can see that if you didn't have money, you had to find ways to do things. Having a lot of money was not my goal. Having enough money was my goal. And as I started to earn my own money, I quickly realized that money has to come with a set of values, or it's not really worth much. It's easy to spend money, but it's not always easy to spend it wisely. And through my experiences, I learned that money does not define who you are. Who you are defines what you do with money. Now, I have always been frugal. At first, it was because I had to be, and later on, it was because I had formed that habit and I chose to be. I wanted to be the one in control of my money. I wasn't interested in letting money control me. So when I got married, I realized that being away from my family, I was truly, honestly independent with my husband. And what our future was going to be up to us and how we created it and what we did with our money. And right away, we vowed that we would never go in debt for anything. We always saved in order to have enough money to buy what we wanted before we bought it. And it took us 6 months to save up for a small black and white TV. And I remember being married in March and getting it just in time for the new shows when they came out in September. That was a big day. And after that, we bought a kitchen table and chair set that lasted us for 25 years through all of our children. But unfortunately, when our first son was a baby, he had a head injury and he had to have brain surgery. And the doctor bills put us in debt beyond our control. And we did not like the feeling of not being in control of our lives. We worked very hard to get out of control, or to get out of debt. We always wanted to be in control. So we devised a way to pay our bills and get out of debt by listing them on a sheet of paper. Whatever doctor bill or hospital visit or prescription or medical procedure, we listed them all on a sheet of paper from the smallest to the greatest and from the shortest payment time to the most. And when we'd pay one off, then we would take that payment and apply it to the next line. And we did that consistently until we got down to about $2,000 that we owed. And about that time, we moved to Colorado. Larry had been looking for a job that would pay well, and he had a chance to move to Colorado and play softball, which didn't pay, but it had a little tag with it that he could earn a lot more money there. So we moved there after we'd been married about 5 years, and he had an opportunity to advance his career, and he found a job at a Toyota store and became very successful at it. He was Toyota's first $1 million parts man. Now that meant that he sold $1 million worth of parts out of one store well before anyone else did. And then the next year he sold $2 million worth before anyone else sold $1 million worth. So he was advancing in his career and having a good time. We had 2 children at the time and 1 on the way, so I had quit my job and I was now a stay-at-home mom. Well, Larry worked very hard, but one day he said he was at work and he had an epiphany. He realized that our children were a permanent part of our life and that he was going to have to feed, clothe, and educate them for a very long time. So he also realized that he had to be the very best at whatever he chose, that he could never be denied the opportunity for a good job. And from that day forward, he worked about 80 to 90 hours a week. But it paid off because his boss took notice and promoted him from parts manager to general manager of the Toyota store. Now, that's not a pathway that is a normal pathway to general manager. But he did so well at that job that as his boss grew his company and added other stores, Larry was then promoted to the operations manager over 5 stores. Now, every time he got a promotion, he got a pay raise. But we decided that we were okay with where we were. We didn't need that extra money. So instead of raising our lifestyle, we put that money in the bank and saved it. And when we had enough, we invested it in some land and some other things. We created some savings accounts. And so that's how we handled our money. When we got to a point that our loan or our bills were down far enough, one day a man came into the Toyota store with an old Land Cruiser, and Larry bought it for $800, restored it, and then sold it for enough money that we could pay all of our bills, and we never went in personal debt again. Now, that's different than company debt, but personally, We never encumbered any of our assets with the business. So we have lived that way all of our lives. If we couldn't pay cash for it, we just didn't need it. But we did have a nice lifestyle, but we continued to be frugal. And it's a lot easier to be frugal if you both have the same attitude about money, which we did. Neither one of us had much growing up, and so we didn't have large appetites for a lot of things or playthings. And we tried to teach our children the same attitude about life, that you don't need a lot of things to be happy. You need each other, you need a good family, you need the great outdoors, you need sports, whatever it was, to fulfill those longings inside to be a good person. So where do your children learn about money? If they don't learn it from you, where do they get it? Do they get it from the TV? From their friends? Do they just have trial and error, get a little bit, and go spend it, be without it, and try again? Do they see it on the social media? Nowhere do they get taught. Today, I would encourage you to teach your children and your grandchildren, if you have the opportunity, about the mechanics of money very early on. Show them the family budget and let them see how it fits into their lives or how they fit into its life. And make sure that money is alive for them and not just some nebulous object that you talk about. You could even let them help you pay the bills. I knew one family while we lived in Colorado. The man was an attorney, and he had 6 children. And when he'd bring his paycheck home, he would cash the check, and then he would divide it equally among all the members of the family. And then he would bill them for their expenses in the family. That way, they learned how to use money, and they learned how their impact on the family either cost them or let them save money. I think that's kind of an interesting experience. But they had to pay for food, gas, car, yard work, everything that the family did, they were part of. And it really did encourage each one to take responsibility for their share of the expenses. What a practical way of teaching children about a budget. Another thing I think you should do is teach children the difference between wants and needs. Do they just want something, or do they really need it? Now, it's okay to want something, but it's better to take care of the needs first and then take care of the wants. And even 4-year-olds can understand this concept. My grandchildren, who now have children of their own, are teaching their children like this. And my one granddaughter said she took her 4-year-old to the store with her, and as she put something in the cart, she looked at her mother and said, "Is that a want or a need?" So they know. Help your children learn that money has a soul. It has a purpose, and it has a life. And if you do that, then it will be natural for them to be able to learn about how to budget money. They need to know about budgeting. I've found that so many of them don't. Even in my own family, I have young married couples who struggle with budgeting, and they get themselves into trouble really fast if they don't get that concept early on. And they struggle with the freedom of being married because no one's holding them accountable until the bill collector comes along, and then it's very embarrassing. But it's a simple concept. You earn money, you put some away for savings, you pay your bills and obligations, and then you can use the rest for whatever you think you need or want, and not the other way around. It's in today's world of easy come, easy go, easy credit and affluence, it's really hard to have the discipline to take control of your spending if you don't know how. But teach your children to keep money in perspective. That means use it wisely and don't become a slave to it, and don't let it define who you are or how you act. Money has a lot of consequences. Some are good and some are not so good. But if you plan well and you manage carefully, your children can learn to have the joy of money through a lot of different areas. They can learn to have the freedom to live their life the way they want to. They can have the freedom to earn as much as they want to. They can have the freedom to do whatever they want with their earnings if they learn responsibility. They can have the freedom to benefit the lives of other people after they've taken care of themselves. And most of all, they can have the freedom to live according to the values and beliefs that they learn to cherish. But if they don't learn these principles well and use self-discipline, they could have some consequences that are not so good. And some of those are having an addiction to the excitement of having their own money and not using it wisely. They can become a slave to indebtedness and never get out. It's a vicious cycle. They could lose all of their wealth by being irresponsible. Or they could become obsessed with the desire to have riches and economic power just for the sake of having riches and power. Or they could cause destruction of their lives and the lives of their families. And they may try doing whatever it takes to get those riches and power. I remember a time when my husband, when we lived in Colorado, he got a $10,000 bonus for doing something really well. And we thought, well, teach the children what money looks like. So he cashed that check into $20 bills and came home and laid it out on our king-size bed, and it covered the whole bed. And the 3-year-old and the 5-year-old came in and said, "Wow, are we rich?" $10,000 was a lot of money, but you're not rich with that much. But what they did understand, that money is real, and it's money that you use as a means of doing most things in your life. So it's really important that early on you teach children about money. Now, saving money became a habit, and we helped our children to learn the value of money and the value of using it wisely by opening up savings accounts for them at the same time we were getting those raises and saving our own money. And we budgeted for the future. Each pay raise meant that there was more money to save, not to spend. When we spent money, our children understood that it was only for the things we needed, and if we didn't need something, we generally didn't buy it. And that way, we could do some fun things like take great vacations a couple of times a year and not overspend and lose control. So when the opportunity came along to buy our first dealership back here in Utah, we were able to take advantage of that because we had saved a lot of money. At least we thought it was a lot. It was $88,000. It wasn't enough to buy a dealership, but it was enough to show that we were serious about being frugal with our money and enable someone else to have confidence in us and loan us the rest. If we hadn't practiced saving in the early 70s as a young married couple, the Utah Jazz might not be in Utah today. We would, thank you. We would not own our dealerships or our theaters or the Bees or the Tour of Utah or be able to provide thousands of scholarships to young people to help the universities. And so you see, it's a process. As we learn how to manage our lives and our money, we don't know what the future is going to hold, but we know that we'll be prepared because we will have been practicing correct principles and using our money wisely. That big opportunity came along one early April one year in 1979 when we came to Utah for a vacation. And Larry happened to ask an old friend who owned the Toyota store here if he would be willing to sell us his store. We had not planned that, but we were losing ground in Colorado because the owner had 8 sons and he wanted them to run those 5 dealerships. So Larry knew that was the writing on the wall and we needed to look for something else. He was willing to teach them the car business, but eventually those boys would take over. So that's what instigated this question in Salt Lake. That man said yes. That was on about April 21st. And on May 1st of that, 40 years ago this year, we bought that dealership because we practiced saving for the future and being good stewards over what we had. And by doing what we thought was important, we were able to teach our children the value of money. One day, my grandson came home from school and he said, "Mom," he called me Mom because I was raising him. He said, "Mom, are we filthy rich?" And I looked at him and I said, "I don't know what that means. Do you?" He said, "No." And he just went off and played. But somebody at school had told him that. Those are the challenges that you face with children. And it's important to teach them what those things mean and that money has a value, but it doesn't define you. Now, like I said, we will be celebrating 40 years in business this May 1st. For the first 25 years, we focused on building the financial strength of our company. Every time we got a paycheck, we would pay our bills, and then any extra money went back into the business to make sure that we could grow and be financially viable. Then the point came where we could begin to think about ways that we could do something significant and not have to put it all back in the company. And that's when we created a family foundation with the idea that we could use our resources to make a difference in the communities where we do business. Now, while Larry was alive, he was the chairman of the foundation, and he made most of the decisions. And I remember one day him coming home and he said, "You know, I get 11.4 requests every day, all day long per year from people who would like to have some money to do good things with." I thought that was an awful lot, and I couldn't understand the magnitude of how hard that must be. He felt the weight of giving, and he felt the weight of being a good steward over what we were doing. But when he passed away, and I took over that task of managing the foundation, I began to understand exactly what he meant when he said using that money wisely. We can't help everyone, but when you have an opportunity to help, we have guidelines by which we measure all of the requests and try to help those who it will impact the most. The responsibility of deciding how much to give and who to give to is an awesome responsibility. I believe that we, all of us, have a mission. The future is not a place that we're going to. It's a place that you're going to create. And success isn't about how much money you make. It's about the difference you make in people's lives. So is sharing what you have important? Absolutely. Philanthropy is part of the fabric that makes this country great and that weaves us together as a people. I believe that we instinctively care about each other. I believe that it's important for us to look for ways to lift each other. We are a happy people who celebrate life and who appreciate the opportunities to pursue happiness. In our quest for happiness, we are moved with the desire to share our blessings with others. The reasons I give are very simple. It's because we are stewards as a family over many things, and I believe that where much is given, much is required. I give back because it makes me feel good. I do it because I can help others who can't help themselves. And I believe that it encourages others to give. And there are many other reasons why we give. Now, I was born into humble circumstances. Like many Americans today, there were times when my family struggled to have food on the table. And because of this and other events in my life, I learned at a very early age that it really isn't what you have that's important. It's what you do and who you are that's important. When I married, my husband and I had the same attitude about money. And this was really important because if you're on different wavelengths about money, it can be very difficult to manage it together. Neither one of us was driven by wanting to amass a lot of money for ourselves or a lot of things, toys to play with. But it was important to us to continue to live by the ideals that we were brought up on. Everyone can give something, whether it's money, services, or goods. We can all give. And it doesn't really matter how much you can give. The fact that you're willing to give is the important part of that equation. I am the same person today as I was a little girl roller skating around the neighborhood because I know who I am and money does not define me. I would admonish all of you to live a values-driven life. Use money as a tool to do good things with. Don't let money rule your attitude or your life, and understand your value and the value of money, and have consistent practices with your money, like paying your bills, saving something every paycheck, and helping those who are less fortunate than you. The quality of your life will be in direct proportion to the quality of the decisions you make. May you always make good decisions and experience a lot of success wherever you look for it. I'd like to leave you now with a short story about a wise woman whose wisdom allowed her the freedom to use her riches for good. Some of you may have heard it before. But once a wise woman was traveling in the mountains and found a precious stone in a stream. The next day, she met a traveler who was hungry, and the wise woman opened her bag to share her food. The hungry traveler saw the precious stone and asked the woman to give it to him, and she did so without hesitation. The traveler left rejoicing in his good fortune. He knew that stone was worth enough to give him security for a lifetime. But a few days later, he came back to return the stone to the woman. "I've been thinking," he said. "I know how valuable this stone is, but I give it back to you in the hope that you will give me something more precious. Give me what you have within you that enabled you to give me this stone." Sometimes it's not the wealth we have, but it's what's inside us that others need. We can all be the wise woman giving the precious stone because we are all rich already. We have all that power within us that traveler was seeking. The quality within that is so much more precious than any diamond or any other material thing can possess, including even our material security. We all have the power, the potential to be generous, liberal, open-handed, but this quality only shows itself if we use it. This great gift that we're all blessed with only exists when we let our open hearts overflow into our open hands and offer what we have to others. But when we use this gift of ours to give, we are giving far more than the material gifts that are the currency. We're giving far more than this wise woman's stone. We are giving that which the traveler came back for, the gift of the heart that provides far more than material needs. May we all exercise such loving giving in our lives, and may it enrich our lives and the world. Thank you. Now, if you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. If you have any questions, I'm certainly open to them. I'm kind of an open book. So, we have microphones up here. Maybe our time's up. Susan, what do you think? Okay. Thank you.
Every time. Gail, thank you so much for giving of your time, your wisdom, and thank you so much for all the great things you and your family have done for our community, for our great state. Thank you so much. Let's give Gail another hand. Hopefully you've noticed these little business cards on your tables. This has the address for our survey. This is our first conference like this. We want to make sure that we get your feedback. I'm sure that there are many ways in which we can improve the experience for you all. We really value your feedback. So please be sure and grab one of these. And at the end of the conference today, sometime within the next couple of days, log on and provide us with your feedback. The link also shows at the end or on one of the slides, I guess, in this sponsor series of slides. So it is 1 o'clock and it's time to jump to our next round of breakout sessions. And remember, after the next 2 rounds of breakout sessions, we need to have you back here at 3 for the drawings, for the raffles. So see you back at 3.